Acts chapter 2. We'll begin reading at verse number 43. So I was probably 22 when I first started questioning why we have a church. Prior to that, I was absolutely in love with the church. I was a church nerd. Anytime the church door was open, I wanted to be there. I was the one kid who I didn't want to do other things. I wanted to be at church. My mom would say, I'm going to church for Bible study. You can stay home and watch TV, or you can come to church with me. And I would say, I want to go to church. I just loved being here. I loved watching the deacons. We had a little footstool that sat under the altar, and they would bring the footstool out and put it in front of the altar. The deacons would come and bend down in front of the footstool and pray, and pray those old classic church prayers with a little tremble in their voice. Say, oh Lord, we just want to thank you that when we woke up this morning, our bed was not our cooling board, and our sheet was not our wine cloth. Yeah. Oh God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you've been so good to us. You've been better to us than you've been to ourselves. And he would just, and as the deacons would be praying as if to encourage him, there'd be another deacon over in the corner who just out of nowhere would start, and he would say, there's a man at the river, giving sight to the blind. And it was a beautiful kind of pageantry about this. And I enjoyed being there. I loved every minute of it. Even when I went to college, I went away and I thought, this is my chance to do something new and try something different. So I said, I'm going to stop going to church. I'm not going to go to church at all. And it lasted for about 3 Sundays. And after on the third Sunday, I was sitting there and I was like, what am I doing? Like, there is nothing, I would much rather be in church than not be in church. And so I went right back to church. So I really never questioned why there was a church until my parents died. And my mother died and my father died. And the reason I questioned it was because I believed, leading up to that God would answer whatever prayer we prayed, as long as it wasn't a prayer that was out of God's will or in contradiction with anything that was in the Bible. I couldn't pray that God bless me with a bunch of cocaine. That would not be in line with biblical principle. But the life of my parents seemed very much to be in line with the Bible. I was young, and my parents were too young for me to lose them. And so we prayed. And when my mother got sick, I didn't even worry about it. I didn't flinch. Because she said, Nelson, I have cancer, but I've talked to God about it and it's going to be all right. And so I took it as that. It was fine. So I didn't think about it, and it didn't faze me until she died. And then I didn't get a chance to really process that before I found out my dad was sick and had cancer. And we went through the whole thing all over again with him. And then at the end of it, I was asking, how do I believe about God, and what do I say about God after this? And so I did something I'd never done before. I called up the Pastor Edwards, who's at Southern Baptist. We were holding a service at Southern. I said, Pastor Edwards, I know it's customary to let the pastor preach the eulogy, but I need to ask you to let me preach it, please. Because I need to process this. And I'm a preacher, so I've got to preach it out. And if I don't preach it out, I'm worried I might never preach again. And so he was very kind and gracious and allowed me the space to do it. And so I wrestled with what to say about all of this. And I preached the Luke Emmaus text. What is it that you're so sad about as you walk along the way? And how Jesus walks with us in the middle of our pain. And that began this turn of my belief, a difference in understanding about God. as a God who answers our prayers as long as we do what's right and follow all the rules, and pray earnestly to a God who's with us in the middle of our ups and downs and our ins and outs and our struggles. And that kind of led me towards the turn of where I am now, in understanding God as a God of justice, for whom justice is the primary concern, and that we are at our best as the people of God when we are living out that call to justice. Not that the things that we would call righteousness or the living right, not that that is irrelevant, but that is part of what it takes to create a community of justice, right? So I'm not honest and truthful in my dealings with you and avoid lying to you because I'm afraid that if I don't, God won't bless me or God won't answer my prayer. I do it because we can't have just a relationship. There can't be any justice if I'm deceiving you. Right? And so it's kind of shaped the way I think about this. So now we're at this point in U.S. history, in the world where the church is changing quicker than many of us know what to do with. And it has something to do with this text, right? So the Bible says the disciples came together, and they came together, one, for the teaching of the word, right? They came to be instructed in the word. And then it said after they had the instruction in the word, they went home and they fellowshiped, right? And for all of American history up until the last 20 years, these two things happened primarily in local churches, especially for the black community. This is where we came to hear about God. This is where we came to fellowship. My grandmother grew up in Crystal Springs, Mississippi. It's a small town. So small, if you're driving on Highway 55 headed to New Orleans and you blink, you will miss it. But in this small town of Crystal Springs, Mississippi, she went to Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. And Pleasant Hill Baptist Church was the center of the life of the community. When people wanted to gather together to eat and fellowship, to have a cookout, they did it at the church. They would come to church, and they would bring their food. They would have a quick devotion service because they didn't have a big refrigerator, and so the food wasn't going to stay cold, and they didn't have a big oven, so the food wasn't going to stay warm. So they had a real quick devotion service. They had a song, and they had a prayer, and that was it. And then they would go out and they would eat and they would fellowship and enjoy life together. And that was the center of the community. When somebody needed to hear what God was saying to them, they came to the church to hear it. It was the pastor who told the people that God loved them, in spite of whatever circumstances were happening in Mississippi. It was God that told them that it was that God and not the governor who dictated the end of their life. It was God and not the president who had the final say on what happened. It was God who and not the local sheriff who determined their value in their work. It was God and not their employer who validated their sense of being. They came to hear the word from God. But about 20, 30 years ago, they started shifting a bit in the commercialization of religion. And so people started realizing, hey, there's a whole lot of money that can be made off of this. Wow. And if we are thoughtful and strategic, we can actually make enormous sums of money off of this. And so in the same way that there used to be dollar stores around the corner, and that's where we would get our groceries at the store around the corner. My great uncle owned one in Alexandria, Louisiana, and I would go and work there in the summer. And everybody would come in and buy toilet paper or paper towel or whatever they needed. If they needed something special, they would say, "Hey, can you get this for me?" And he'd say, "Yeah, give me about 2 weeks and I'll have it for you." And he was the one who did this for the entire community until Walmart came in. And then people stopped coming to him, except for little kids who wanted candy in the summer, and they couldn't ride their bike to Walmart. But when Walmart came in, everybody flocked to Walmart. And so then the store kind of dwindled and it died. And this is what's been happening in religion.
Amen.
We have a lot of Walmart religion that's been taking place.
Watch out, watch out.
And it started in the 80s with Jim and Tammy Faye Baker and Paul and Jan Crouch and TBN. And we didn't realize what was happening. We thought it was a wonderful thing. We've got God on television. This is great. Everything's on television. God ought to be on television. We didn't realize that it was going to have an impact on local churches. We didn't realize that so many churches, in trying to imitate what they saw on TV, would stop preaching based on what people needed in their situation.
Yeah, say that.
And now everybody wants to be what they see on TV.
Wow.
We didn't realize Creflo Dollar was going to change the way people preach in the local church. And that now, you're hard pressed to find a preacher who will get up on Sunday and open the Bible and say anything from the Bible that has any relevance to anything that's happening in the newspaper.
Amen. Say that.
Gardner Taylor was a phenomenal preacher out of Brooklyn, New York. 90 years, was a mentor to Dr. King, and he used to always say, "You've got to preach with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other."
Yeah.
And he would say, sometimes you start with the Bible and you bring it to the newspaper. Right. And sometimes you start with the newspaper and you bring it to the Bible. It doesn't matter where you start as long as they meet somewhere in the sermon.
That's right.
But now you can go and you can hear sermons and nobody's intersecting it with what's happening in the news because we're so busy trying to imitate Walmart television, Walmart religion. And it isn't that we didn't have these people who were very kind of questionable, marginal characters in religion before. We had Father Divine and Daddy Grace. And before there was ever any kind of slick preacher anywhere, there was Father Divine and Daddy Grace. And if you ain't heard the stories about Father Divine and Daddy Grace, some of these stories are amazing. They said Father Divine had a trap door underneath the pulpit. And he would go under the trap door and it would launch him up to the stage. And he would come up and he would jump through the trap door so as it appears that he came out of nowhere. And he would always wear these really white, glistening clothes. And he had a pressed, permed hair. And he would come up and he would shout and he would say, "You can't lose with the stuff I use." And it isn't that we didn't have those guys before, but the truth was that even Father Divine, for as slick as he was, and he was slick, they say Father Divine was in with the numbers people, that they would tip him on what the numbers were. And so if you listen to Father Divine's sermon, he would give you the number. But you didn't know which one it was, because he'd give you a lot of numbers. He'd say, turn to John 3:16, and hymn 222. And on March the 15th, and he would, all kinds of numbers, and so people would be trying to write down all these numbers to figure out which number was the number. This was Father Divine. He was slick, I'm telling you. But Father Divine also fed people in the park. He didn't take all the money for himself. He took some of the money for himself. He didn't take it all for himself.
Amen.
He gave food away to the people. Even Father Divine and all of his slickness was connected to the community. And wouldn't let the community suffer without him having something to do with it. Right? But what happened is we created these people who have no real connection to the community, but amass millions and millions of dollars. So I remember in 2004, I want to say it was 2004, 50 Cent had the best record. It was called In the Club. I didn't even want to like him, but that song was just so catchy. Like, 50 Cent made $20 million on an album that year. $20 million in 1 year on an album. And it's amazing to think about. And what's more amazing is that Joyce Meyer that same year made $40 million. She's a white preacher, a white woman preacher in St. Louis, Missouri. That doesn't have a church, mind you. She doesn't have a church. She has a ministry. There's no congregation. It's her and television cameras. She made $40 million that same year. There's a lot of money to be made in this. They say, what's my man in Texas with the big smile?
Osteen.
Yeah, him. They say somebody robbed his church one Sunday morning, got $500,000 out the offering.
My goodness.
On one Sunday, $500,000.
Got to be more careful.
Now, what I don't know if it was the whole day's offering, or if it was that services offering. But let's say it was the whole day. That's $500,000 one Sunday. There are 52 Sundays out of the year. There's a lot of money to be made in this stuff. And when there's that much money at stake, it's easy to compromise the gospel.
Yeah.
Amen.
And you make strange bedfellows.
Yes.
You make alliances with people that maybe you ought not make alliances with. And then we find ourselves now with a presidency that the religious community has very little voice to be able to critique, because they've backed him and his party for so long that they can't be prophetic to him without being prophetic to themselves. And when your church is operating on a $25 million budget, it's hard to preach a sermon that might put that money in jeopardy. When you grow up preaching in West Virginia, wearing bright yellow suits, and you leave West Virginia and go to Dallas, Texas, and open a mega church down in Dallas, you don't preach the same.
Right.
Well,
So then, what does the church do in this moment? There have been times, there have been days, a friend of mine named Reverend Sekou, I love him, I'm going to get him here one day to preach. Reverend Sekou is about 5'0". You might have to put him on a phone books to stand up behind this thing. Just all dreadlocks. Sings the blues from Arkansas. His granddaddy was an Arkansas blues man. He sings gospel blues that have a protest bit in it right now. I mean, that's what he does. And preach his behind off. And Sekou, I talk to him every once in a while, and something will happen, and I'll call him and I say, Doc, what are we gonna do? And he'll say, man, we just might have to pack it up and go home. He said, we just, I don't know that we have a chance. Every once in a while, I said, man, I don't know that we have a chance. And there are times where we're joking, but there are times when we feel like that, when we feel like the culture is moving in a way that's so strong. And the people who are speaking are so few that people don't have to come to the local church for the word anymore. They get the word in other places. They turn on their TV, they get the Walmart word, and they think the Walmart word is what they need, right? But like that suit, you buy at Walmart, it might look good the first day you wear it.
Say that, watch out.
But the first time you brush up against the wall, it's gonna catch something. Right? But instead, what happens is we go back and we get another Walmart word.
That's true.
And we get caught in this cycle. So we don't need the local church for the word in the same way we do. We don't need the local church for fellowship in the same way we do, because there are opportunities to fellowship outside of the church. I was driving to church today and I saw 5 restaurants of people, all full. People waiting outside, sitting, talking, laughing, had a good time. Probably 90% of them ain't gone to nobody's church today. We don't need the church for fellowship. Last night I was sitting in my apartment. I opened the window and I got 2 clubs within shouting distance of my house. And so I hear all the noise from Privilege and Level. They both within a stone's throw. And the people outside in the parking lots. Because that's where they're gathering the fellowship. They don't need to come to the church. Now some of them are going to be singing in somebody's choir this morning, and that's all right. We thank God for that. But they don't need to come to the church for fellowship. So if they don't need to come for the word, and they don't need to come for fellowship, why do we have the church? What can we do? Now don't get me wrong. I think the quality of word we offer is better than the Walmart word.
Amen. Amen.
I think the depth of the fellowship that we have here is more valuable than the surface fellowship that's available in other places.
Amen.
But I want to be realistic that people don't have to come here for that. And you have to have an appreciation for that. I remember I took my nephew out. My nephew was 4. I took him out to eat, and I want to be fancy and take him out somewhere nice. And so we go to a relatively nice restaurant. It wasn't too fancy, but just fancy enough. Try to get him, expose him to something different. He looks at the menu and he says, "I want chicken fingers." I said, "Man, why do you want chicken fingers? There are all kinds of stuff you can get here. You can get steak, you can get hamburgers, you can get shrimp, you can get salmon. Why don't you try something different?" And he says, "I want chicken fingers." Right? Because he didn't have a developed taste for anything else. The chicken fingers were what he needed, right? And so I can tell him that other stuff is better for you. You're going to enjoy it more. It's going to be more beneficial. But no, he knows chicken fingers, so that's what. So we can say our word is better, our fellowship is better, but they got chicken fingers, and that's what they know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do we do that's different than can be done out there? And I think there are a couple of other things that they do in this text that's important. One says they pulled their resources together.
Yes.
And I think that is a critical part of it. Any change in the history of the world happens in 2 ways. You organize people and you organize money. And you need them both. It isn't one or the other. You got to have organized people and organized money in order to change the world. When we pull our resources together, we have the ability not only to preach our convictions and not only to enact them in our lives, but to use our collective resources to move the needle on some of our convictions.
Amen.
All right? We ought not be using all of our resources just for our own existence. And that's why churches get into danger. That's why every time somebody says, "Pastor, when we going to buy our own building?" I said, not for a long time.
Amen.
Because I don't want all of our resources tied up in a building.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Because then all of our resources are just for our survival. And God never designed us to live like that.
Amen. Amen.
Even in the Old Testament, he said you would take your crops and set aside some of it for somebody else.
That's right.
It's not all for you. We've got to be able to use and collect resources together to move the needle on some of the things that we need to in our society. Right? So we do this in part with Baby Bear. That's one place where we collect resources to be able to give to somebody else. Because poverty is a real issue that we have to move the needle on. And so while we're trying to move the needle from a legislative perspective, we also need to make sure that the people who are in poverty have something to help. They have a safety net to hold on to them. And it doesn't look like that this president is going to help with any safety net. And we've got 4 years of a poverty commission in Cincinnati, and they just now figured out that they can't get children out of poverty without getting their parents out of poverty.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So we've got to be doing something to hold this safety net for people while we're trying to move the needle. So this is one way that we do that. We collect our resources. And we pool our resources together. And then it's this thing about signs and wonders. That they came together and they did signs and wonders. They made a difference in people's lives. In the very next verses you'll read, Peter and John are walking towards the temple to pray. And there will encounter a man who's been laid out begging alms. And they're going to radically transform his life. All throughout the book of Acts, you're going to have people who encounter individuals. There's a eunuch who's riding home, reading the Bible and not understanding what he's reading. And Philip goes up to him and says, "Hey, do you know what that's saying?" And the man says, "How can I know if nobody tells me?"
That's right.
These encounters will happen where people's lives are changed. That happens in the local church.
Amen.
Because changing lives means you have to take time to interact with somebody and engage with them. You can't change their life from a TV screen or a radio, or as much as I would like to, not even over Facebook Live. You got to get your hands dirty and you got to interact with somebody in order to change your life.
Amen. Amen.
And so if there are two things that we can be doing now that sets us apart from the Walmart word that people get, from the chicken finger preaching and fellowship. I'm gonna do the fried chicken theology and the chicken finger fellowship. That's going to be a whole lot of chicken. From all of that, it is that we pull our resources together to be able to put some muscle behind our preaching. To literally put our money where our mouth is. And that we engage with people's lives with the mindset of trying to transform people. Of being in relationship with them with the goal of transformation. So now I want to hear from you. What are you thinking? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Yes, ma'am.
That it's time for us to, as a community, as we come together here, to touch others as we come. We may not bring the whole team over here, the little girls dancing and stuff, but to touch one, to touch a family, to touch a mom or a dad, let them know, okay, there's nothing wrong with dancing, but you know, what else, what's going on in your life where you need help, you know? There may be just a single parent, they may need help, we don't know, but we will never know until we reach out to them.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I was waiting to capture some other points because pooling resources, I'm involved in a lot of community groups. And that's what we do. We have a particular purpose because I'm involved with the Down Syndrome Association, involved with a green group, things that I have interest in.
Yeah.
I think the reason why I come here, to be honest, is reinforcement for me to go back out there and do stuff. So we gotta still have the personal enrichment part. And you were talking about understanding the signs and symbols, and I thought that was what you were gonna go into next. I think we need to make sure that what's in it for me, especially for the millennials, they're all about that. You know, it's gotta be, it can't just be an outward thing, it's gotta be something in it for them too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There are two things I'm reflecting on as I hear that. The first is for many of us, and I feel like I'm kind of in this liminal space. I've got a foot in one generation and a foot in the other. But for many of us, we do have these other external commitments, right? Where we've made a decision that we're going to support this foundation or that foundation, and the church is part of what we give. I remember hearing this from Jeremiah Wright. Jeremiah Wright was Barack Obama's pastor. He's also Oprah Winfrey's pastor. All right, and so they were asking him about Oprah Winfrey giving to the church. And somebody said, "Doc, does Oprah Winfrey tithe to your church?" And he said, "No." He said, "If Oprah Winfrey tithes to the church, we change the name to The Color Purple." He said there are a handful of organizations that she cares about and she's responsible for, and she gives charitably to all of them. And she gives generously to us. She'll come in and be in worship and drop a $30,000 check. And we praise God for that. But we understand that her giving commitments are spread. And we don't try to change that. Because that's, because we can't change that. We understand that, and so that's the way we are in a relationship with her and with many other people. And it's that way for a lot of people. The church is a part of how they give back to the world. And there are other places where they do that. There's a generation coming up that has no such commitments. They don't know how to give back. They have not been taught how to give back. Or they have not been in position yet to give back. And they're just coming into a place now where they have money. Or they're coming in and they're saddled with so much debt from education that giving back doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so they only have a little bit. But what I want to be thinking about is how do we pull that little bit together? Because this isn't the first time we've had this kind of phenomenon in the history of the world either. Our parents built colleges on nickels and dimes.
Yes, they did.
Churches too.
And we are going to have to build and rebuild institutions on nickels and dimes. And that's fine. I mean, I think that's something we're just going to have to come to accept a bit. But helping people who have not made those commitments to think about if I can carve a little bit of space in my income, it doesn't have to be much, but if I can carve a little bit of space and pull it together with other people who've carved out a little bit of space, we think about what we can achieve together, how we can move things together. how we can move the needle on society together. The other part of that is we have to be engaged in ministry that's compelling enough for people to make that sacrifice.
And you know, I wasn't even thinking of money because from at this age, it's my time.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, because if I have enough time, I can make more money. So it's all about time. I
Yeah.
was thinking of that resource.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that is in the same it's in the same ballpark of how we spend our time. That's an extremely valuable resource. In many ways, more valuable than money. Yeah. The other point of what you mentioned, I want to say is that I want to be clear that we're not abandoning the things that we do for this focus. We still got to preach the word. And we've still got to help people wrestle with what is this belief that we call Christianity? What does it look like in your daily life? We're still doing that. So we're not giving that up to do these other things, but it's how do we incorporate that? A so-called church expert who was saying, you gotta hammer down on giving. You gotta hammer down on giving. And I said, look, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Our people, we're probably somewhere between 85 and 90% of our giving capacity in terms of both money and time and energy. We just don't. Our church gives a lot. That's not our issue, right? Our issue is that what it takes to do the work we need to do is more resources than we currently have, right? And so, which is why growth is important. But we, as far as time and energy, we're committed, and the ways in which you all are engaged in the world are valuable. And I really believe it's part of the extension of what we want to do, right? So there's like the institution of the church, and then there's the mission of the church, right? So the way I'm starting to understand and realize this is that my job is, as much as possible, to do the caretaking of the institution of the church. I've got to build and protect the institution of the church so that you all are equipped to do the ministry of the church. Right? If I burden you with the institution building, then who's doing ministry? All right? So if I say, I need all of your time and commitment, I say, as I've heard it's possible somebody else may have said, if you do work in these other places, then it's a sin against God, because I want you to be here to build a church. Then where's the ministry? It's all about preserving the institution. And that's not your job. My job is to cultivate the institution. We need the institution, but only so that we can do the ministry. And quite honestly, if we have to choose between the institution and the ministry, we will sacrifice the institution. We can do the ministry without microphones and FaceTime and all of the stuff that we've got.
Yeah.
And we'll do that if we have to. But the institution provides us convenient ways to be able to connect with one another, to strengthen one another in the work of the ministry.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to try to protect, is that. But your work is to do, so when you're out in the community doing the work, that's part of you carrying out the ministry of the church elsewhere.
Maybe I should be being more thoughtful about wearing my beloved community church T-shirt or so I can also maybe, through representing, help with the resources, because if we are all those kind of people who are carrying out the mission, but how do we bring in more resources?
Yeah, so I mean, that's going to be a part of it. I mean, anytime you're able to do that, those little branding things, they help. Researchers say you need to see something 10 times before it clicks, because we're so saturated with images and things like that, so you need 10 times before you really start to recognize it, so those little things help. But also it's the relationships you build in the work. Right? It's, as you're out there and you're in relationship with people, who is it that you're in relationship that needs to be here, that this space is a space for them, right? It isn't everybody I interact with. It's not that I don't want everybody. I'm happy for everybody to come. But there are people who I interact with that I know, you need to be here.
Amen.
Because what we're doing here is going to help you wrestle with these questions you're wrestling with.
Amen.
Right? When I hear people say, I don't go to church anymore because church people ain't talking about nothing real. It's all about how, giving money to the church, or it's all about, this other stuff in the sky. Nobody's talking about what's happening in the community. Then I know, yeah, you're just in the wrong place. You need to come here. Or people say, I don't come to the church because I've been in churches where they do good work. They do great work. But they really didn't love each other. And I didn't feel any love in the place. And I said, yeah, you've been in the wrong place. You got to come here. And so there are those people who I hear and I engage with, and I know that they need to come here. And so I'm in the cultivation process, planting seeds. Every church ain't like that.
Amen.
There's we're trying to build a community that does something very different. Just planting seeds, believing that there will be a time to harvest that, and that some of those people will come into the space. And some of them have come in, and we pray more will. But that's it's how to think about and engage in those relationships, particularly with the people who need to be here. Other thoughts? And to me, those are the signs. Right? There's a lot of thoughts about what miracles mean in the Bible, right? There are a lot of people who say miracles happened exactly as they said, right? That Paul and John actually, was it Paul and John? Peter and Paul? Peter and John?
Peter and John.
Peter and John. Peter and John actually did grab the man by the hand, and he was lame, and he did get up and walk. That this actually physically happened. And there are other people who say, I'm not so sure that it happened in that way. This may be a metaphor. Maybe the man was lame in his thinking, and a relationship with Peter and John helped him to get strong in his thinking. Maybe he was lame in his spirit, right? Maybe he was emotionally crushed by the empire, and this is what happened. And I don't know. Honestly, those questions are too. You can argue it all you want to, and you'll never know the answer. We'll know when we get to heaven and God tells us.
Amen.
Was this real or was it a metaphor? Was this really a demon-possessed man or was this a metaphor? Was this, either way, it's the point is they engaged with somebody's life and their life was changed, right? Now I haven't yet grabbed anybody up off their sick bed. I haven't done it. It hasn't happened. But the power of transforming somebody's life. I'm here because my life was transformed. I started this off by saying there was a time when I had given up on the church. After my father died, I stopped going. I did preach the sermon, but I stopped going to church for a long time. I was just too sad and too depressed. And my life, I was in a spiral. And I built another community, it just wasn't a healthy community. It was a dangerous community. And they were sucking the life out of me. And one day I got to a point where somebody in the community threatened my life. And even though I didn't mean one word of it, I had to threaten his back just to be able to make him think twice. And I went home and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, Nelson, what are you doing? You can't live like this. And you certainly can't die like this. And so the next Sunday I made my way to church. And I sat in the back of the church, literally behind a pillar, so that the pastor couldn't see me. And he gets up to preach. And he hadn't seen me until he gets up to preach. But he gets up to preach, and he looks in the back, and he says, Reverend Pierce, is that you? Man, come up to the front. Don't sit back there. This is your home. Doesn't matter how long you've been away, just come on up to the front. Come sit in the pulpit. And the people clapped for me, and I went and sat up. I don't even think I was wearing a suit. I was just wearing whatever I could find that morning. And that community is what brought me back. And that's when I started to believe in the church. The community of people that live together and work together. That transformed my life. And if we can do that with individuals, if we can do that with people, transform people who are headed nowhere. Some of them may be headed for destruction. Some of them may be just headed for meaninglessness. If we can transform that, those are the miracles and the signs, I think, that will help people. Brother Breland, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I appreciate what you said earlier, Pastor, about it's not about the physical plant, facility. This is all about. It never has and it never is. What I see today, and I go to a lot of different churches, and just, there's a lot of competition between various churches. And I say that to say, I remember a couple of years back, I attended, and I thought the concept was excellent when I heard about it. We're going to have 6 churches in the community come together, and everybody's going to get an opportunity to get up and do their talk and whatnot. But when it came time to collect, each church sent a representative to get their money from various people. And for me, it didn't, and I mentioned it to the pastors, a couple of pastors, that was a turnoff for me. Instead of putting it all together and then going somewhere and say, okay, here's we're going to do this, do that. It almost was like they were grabbing for the money. I just wanted to share that, and it was a turn off for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept started out as being one that I thought was very good, because here you have the community
Coming together. Except for when it's offering time.
In the end,
We don't always do a great job of thinking through everything that we do. So on one hand, this is why I do this every Sunday. I say the same things every Sunday. Every time we do fellowship, I say the same thing. The Bible says, how do we love God? Who we cannot. You all know it. I say it every Sunday. The reason I say it is because I want you to understand, whether it's your first time here or whether you've been here every Sunday, I want you to understand why we're doing this. It also helps me as I think about what we're doing in the life of the church. Because if we're doing something and I don't have a why, there's not a why that I can get up and say to you, this is why we're doing this based on the Bible, then I have to ask myself, is this something that's important? Do we need to do this? And that's, Brother Breland, that's the issue we have, is that we don't always think through all the whys on stuff. And on that, people are just used to having separate offerings. And nobody was in the room and said, you know what, if we have this event that's about unity and we hold 6 offerings, it's going to destroy the unity. And we'd be better off all collecting one offering and splitting it up, or collecting one offering and it goes somewhere else. Let's have a mission that we all agree on.
Yeah.
Amen.
And all the offering goes to the mission.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, those are things we gotta work on. Any final thoughts? So this summer, and I've shared this with some of the leadership, I want to share publicly. This summer, we're going to be engaging in an intentional growth membership campaign. Now, I don't know if you've ever been a part of a giving campaign where people are trying to raise a certain amount of money by a certain amount of time. It's going to be similar to that, except for we ain't trying to raise money, we're trying to raise people. And for those of you who are willing to engage in this campaign, we're going to ask you to engage with people in ways that you might not be used to, and intentional about how you engage and build relationship with people, and expose them and introduce them to the church with the hopes of that they will come in the door. And that's the goal, is just to get them in the door to see. And then everything else we've got to do as the church body. It's about how we worship and how we love, how they feel God's presence here in a way that will keep them. But none of that will get them in the door. You all got to get them in the door. So I want to ask if you're willing to do that. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to select, to think about between 5 and 6 people, actual people, names of people that you engage with, that you see, work with, live around. 5, 6 people that you're willing to engage in conversation with to see if they belong here. If this is a place that can meet a need that they have, and that you're willing to kind of engage in that, in the process of cultivating that. And that you're willing to be held accountable to that, which means that I'll be checking in and saying, hey, how are the conversations going with so-and-so? If you're willing to engage in that with us, to let me know, so that we can begin that process. You have to be willing to do it. I can't make you do it. You got to be willing to put yourself out there. But I believe if you're willing to, not only will it benefit the life of the church, but I believe that it will benefit your life as well. That you will grow by the process. That your relationships will be enriched by the process. So if you're willing to engage in that with us, let me know. And we'll take some time to go through some specifics about what that will look like. We've got a role play exercise that we've designed to help think through what some of those conversations look like, to put into practice, and we'll do all of that. And on the other end of this, I really do believe God has something great and unique for us to do in this community. And so this is about how do we build to the point where we're able to do what God is calling us to do. Will you bow your heads with me in prayer? God, we say thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards us. God, we thank you for the work that you are doing both in our lives individually and collectively. And for the work you're doing in the community all around us. Some of which we see, and some of which we may not yet see.